ITAs issued for 2023, 109,391. Out of this 42 draws, there were 19 Express Entry all program draws, only 5 PNP draws. It was this one odd FSW, Federal Skilled Worker draw, and you would say, why did they issue that Federal Skilled Worker draw? It did not make sense, but they did issue a Federal Skilled Worker draw in February this year. There was 21 category-based draw. In the first 9 months of 2023, these people who keep saying why there are no CEC draws, why there are no CEC draws, then, well, for you guys, you should know that the maximum number of ITAs have gone to CECs. So people who say there are no CEC draws, well, this is the proof. 45% of invitations were issued to CECs, Canadian Experience Class, and which for the I'm talking about first 9 months because that is the data that is available at this point of time. For the last quarter of this year, the data is not made available from IRCC. So 23,910. That was the number of invitations issued to Canadian Experience Class programs. 45%. Federal Skilled Workers received 15,855. PNPs 13,655. There was no Federal Skilled Trade Program draw. So PNP is 13,655. Federal Skilled Workers got 15,855. CECs, you guys got 23,910. And yet we are always complaining that they are not holding CEC draws. They're not holding CEC draws because even if they are conducting all program draws, in most cases it is the CEC who get those invitations because they are the ones who are able to score better. They are able to score higher. You get points for Canadian education. You get points for Canadian work experience. And in most cases, you're also able to get those job offers and hence get the points for job offers. For people who have been complaining about STEM categories not getting enough invitations, you have to understand that STEM categories did get the maximum number of invitations yet again this year. So the web developers, the data analysts, the software engineers, and the software developers, these categories got the maximum number of invitations. At this point of time, above 30% of all the invitations had gone to these candidates, to these categories. Other than that, you have food services supervisors who are primarily CECs, admin assistants, and accounting technicians. These were the other categories who also received large number of invitations in Canada. But this was all from the general draws. When we start talking about category-based draws, again, healthcare professions, French occupants, French proficiencies, and STEM have been the biggest beneficiaries. So overall, this is what Express Entry looked like in 2023. Now, 2024, what are we looking at? Exciting year ahead. We expect 110,000 people to get their PR through the federal high skill categories, right? In addition to that, there will also be the PNPs, which are linked to Express Entry. So you are expecting roughly 30,000 invitations which might go to the PNPs, of course. So in total, you are looking at roughly 260 to 270,000 under the economic programs. In the federal high skilled, you are looking at roughly, including the PNPs, which will be linked through the Express Entry, you're looking at roughly 150,000 people who will become permanent. 150,000 people, not ITAs. Please, people always confuse the number of ITAs with the number of people. So we are talking about the number of people who will become permanent residents, and that number will be roughly 150,000 people. 150,000 people would again translate to roughly the same number of invitations that have been issued this year. I mean, I'm still on the conservative side. I would say about 90 to 95,000. I'm not sure how they have issued so many invitations, because with so many invitations, few things happen. People who keep declining ITAs, because those also have to be taken into consideration. Still, even today, a lot of people decline ITAs without realizing the negative impact it causes so many people who would have otherwise been eligible and would have gotten through. So when IRCC issues so many invitations, they have obviously taken into consideration the number of invitations that have been declined. Of course, a lot of ITAs also get rejected, right, at the R10 stage. And those are also taken into consideration. And then there is a very small percentage of ITAs that get expired. Expired means you have 60 days to submit your application. If you go beyond 60 days, then that ITA expires. You are out of the Express Entry completely. And there's a very small percentage of that as well. So total 109,391 ITAs issued this year, which was taken into consideration all of this. So for next year, in my opinion, the number of invitations based on all of this numbers that we're looking at between 90 to 100,000. Because the following year, 2025, PR targets are therefore stabilizing. For this year, it's 485,000. Hopefully the number will be closer to 500,000 by the time they conclude the year. So this is the number of people, number of targets, number of quotas. The category-based draws will continue. As I've already told you, the STEM categories, in my opinion, the categories will not change for a big part of the earlier. If there are any changes, they will probably be within the categories itself. So they might remove some knock codes, they might add some knock codes. That is a possibility. Don't know at this point of time. For example, there is a huge hue and cry and demand about construction workers. But in the skilled trade, they can possibly add more knock codes which are more construction related. So I have a feeling that you might see some knock codes being removed and added. That is a possibility. But overall, I expect STEM category to not have as much priority in the category based draws, but I expect healthcare, trades, and construction, these two to have higher number of priority. French, of course, francophones will definitely have that priority. So the three more priority occupations will be the trade, healthcare, and the French. Fourth would be STEM, and then you have the agriculture and transport categories right at the bottom because of the smaller number of percentage that they expect to bring in people under. The reason why I am saying the STEM category occupations will have slightly lower because of the current job market in Canada, overall sentiment within the IT industry and the recession that they are facing with the US and the Canadian market. So I don't expect them to completely close STEM. I don't see that at all. On the contrary, what they have started last year, what they've started this year by making this huge hue and cry about attracting tech talent into Canada, that will continue. But I think they will sort of slow down a little, teeny weeny bit, not a lot, teeny weeny bit. And the reason for that is the whole idea of creating this tech talent strategy in Canada is more to do with attracting investment. I've always said, whatever Canada is doing, it's never doing it for you. It is doing it for itself. So they definitely are looking to continue inviting tech talent. And the reason for inviting tech talent is not because they are in favor of calling more tech people. It is only because by inviting more tech talent, they are then able to promote Canada to the North American companies who are currently in the US or are looking to set up base in the US, that, hey, Canada has a better pool of tech talent. And therefore, instead of the United States, why don't you come and set up your base in Canada? So this is their way of attracting more investment, more industries, more companies to set up base in Canada, or probably have a satellite office in Canada or an offshore office in Canada, or at least a branch operations in Canada. This is one strategy of sort of, competing with the United States for the talent pool that the US has, and therefore more companies set up their base in the US, especially in the Silicon Valley, etc. And therefore that is the push there. But continuing to expect that there are already lots of companies in Canada. Their people are already getting invited in the STEM categories. And I said this year itself, it is more than 30% anticipated. A lot of these people who come to Canada and they work for all these big IT companies like Tech Mahindra, Accenture, Dell, Deloitte, Infosys, and of course there are many more. And then there is the EY and what am I missing? I'm missing a few, but I'm sure all these companies, a lot of these companies bring their own workers on intra-company transfers to Canada. So once these people are here in Canada on an intra-company transfer, after 1 year, they are able to claim points for the job offer and also claim points for the Canadian work experience. So in collection, Canadian work experience, 35, 40 points, job offer, 50 points, and some skills transferability points. So by being in Canada, these people are able to get about 75 to 100 extra points. Now with that extra points, they are certainly right on top of the list, and therefore are able to take advantage of general draws, scores of 500 plus, and of course STEM category, and of course Ontario's human capital priorities with the tech draw as well. So majority of these people who get invited are these people who are already in Canada and have completed 1 year of work experience under the intra-company transfer. So people who get all angsty about why STEM is not being invited, STEM is being invited. It is just that you do not see a specific category-based draw, but they are being invited in the general draws as well. So that is as far as the category-based draws outlook is concerned. First half of the year, you will see a spread draw. You will see more spread out over different categories. Now that the first 6 months of categories have passed, so July to December this year, 6 months of, or rather the experimentation that they wanted to do of the category-based draws, that has already been done. So now that they have a better hang of what is happening, they had lots of tech issues, they had a lot of IT glitches. Draws did not happen for 2 months because they were trying to make all these changes in the backend. hopefully that is all under control. So as we move into next year, 2024, January onwards, you will see a more balanced draw. After a point of time, there might even be a trend that might be established to understand what kind of draws are expected when will the next STEM draw happen. I don't know when the next healthcare draw or trade draw will happen. I don't know, nobody knows. But as we move forward, and as and how IRCC continues to conduct these category based draws, we will have a better understanding, an idea of how many invitations, how many draws, when do they happen, how often will they happen. In addition to that, Ontario does their magic with these draws, which I know a lot of you don't like it, but the people who do receive the invitations, they love it. So at any given point of time, there is always going to be that segment of people who are very pissed, who are very unhappy, who are very upset with the draws. Why? Because they missed by 1 point or 2 points. But that is always going to happen. No matter what the score is, unless the score is 1, the biggest draw of 75 CRS, right? 27,000 people are invited. You know who was upset? The people at 74. At people at 73, they were upset, they were angry. So there will always be people who will be disappointed, who will always be upset. So instead of being upset and being disappointed, you should always aim at what can you do to push your scores up, absolutely maximize in all factors. And then if the draws do not happen, or if you are not counted, well, then just wait for the next one. Because for example, when STEM category draw happened with Express Entry, and I told you, if you can watch my video, I told you there itself that whenever Ontario will conduct its draw, it will be 1 point less. And then thankfully, Ontario conducted the draw very next week, and they conducted at 480, and the lower cutoff went down to 473. And again, the 472s were upset as to why did we not get included. As I said, there is a limit to the number of invitations, and there will always be people who are going to be upset. But the point is for you to identify the pathway and then make sure, or to ensure that your scores are on the higher end of things and you're not held back with the lack of 1 point or 2 points. Of course, if you want to book an appointment, then this is the link. We can always do a one-on-one consultation and try to understand what your queries and concerns are. Please follow us on Instagram. And of course, please do not forget to subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for joining in. I wish every one of you out there a very, very, very happy and a prosperous new year. May this new year be much, much, much better and brings with it all the joys and wishes that you have been hoping for and for your family.